Do you see this mountain range? And this mountain village? Here's a train weaving through these mountains and this village. Here's a lake at the foot of these mountains. Boats, ferries, fog, tunnels. I want to tell you a story of an adventure I took to a very special place, a border region in Europe. It's right here. Here's this region from another angle. This is looking south. You can see that this is where Italy ends and Switzerland begins. This is the magical place I'm talking about. I want to tell you about this because this trip perfectly encapsulates what I think as my recipe for escape. I use the word escape because it kind of feels like I'm running away from something. Running away from some incessant pull to do things, some pressure that tells me to work and produce and do more. It's this constant call to perform for society. I kind of love it. In fact, this isn't a bad thing. This pressure, this intensity, it keeps us all working. But the only way that I can really keep going, keep grinding, is if I can escape. To pull away and to run away from everything just for a while. So let me tell you my ingredients for a real escape. Number one, and the most important foundational ingredient, is mountains. The best escapes happen in the mountains. It doesn't have to be the mountains of northern Italy or Switzerland. Any mountain range will do. I have found escape in mountains from Oregon to Utah to Spain to Guatemala. Even the little mountains near where I live on the east coast of the United States. Mountains are a perfect place to escape. The mountains are like a filter, a border, if you will. They block out busyness. There's nothing busy happening in the mountains. Everything looks like this. It's quiet. There's always falling water. There's always mist, there's fog, and there are always ecosystems that manifest themselves in extremes. Extremely sharp peaks giving way to extremely steep slopes, extremely blue water, extremely yellow trees. We explored lots of mountains. The second ingredient happens atop the mountain. It's the mountain village. Like this one, where the people have been quietly living their lives for ages. There's no hustle up here. There's no grind. There's no one trying to climb any ladder.
It is so quiet. I haven't heard this sort of silence for like a year or more. It's so quiet. Listen.
There's no one doing what I've been doing for the past 7 years, which is hustling and grinding to make something big in some big system. No one is doing that here. They're just doing this. We hit a lot of these little villages on this trip. Just a few kilometers over the Swiss border, you can see this one. It's called Soglio, and it was one of my favorite places of the trip, if not this entire year. We spent the day running down these trails, convincing our children that these rocks are actually a playground, and finishing the day with a dinner that looked over these mountains. The town was silent, empty. We were eating Italian food, but we were in Switzerland. It was perfect. Ingredient number 3 is unplanned adventure. My life is really tightly planned. I have 2 children, and I work like 3 jobs. Every day I make lists of exactly what I can get done in 8.5 hours. And then I work, focusing on each of these items down to the minute. So for me, escape looks like this. See that little tiny church all the way up there? It's right there.
It's all turning.
Yep, we're gonna turn and we're gonna hike and we're gonna discover a way to get up to that mountain. Do you think we can make it happen or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you can point at a church on a mountain and just decide that you want to hike to it.
We're kind of just in the neighborhoods of this little village, so we'll get there.
Maybe you'll make it, maybe you won't.
I can tell we're in the right place because if I look up through the crack up there, we're getting closer and closer.
These unplanned adventures are for some reason incredibly restorative and satisfying for me. We made it up to this little church that I later learned was called San Martino. I had no idea if the kids would be able to make it up the side of the mountain, but they did it, and they did a great job, which made it even more exciting. For some reason, the spontaneity and unplanned nature of this adventure made it all the more exciting and all the more restorative for my brain. Ingredient number 4, lakes and ferries. When I was dating Iz, and I looked like this, I would go up to visit her in Washington State. She lived across the water from Seattle, so I'd go across these ferries a lot. I learned to really love ferries, giant boats that are often a major mode of transportation for the locals. They're cheap, they're frequent, and they're totally local. No frills, just a bunch of people trying to get around the place they live in. The ferries in Lake Como bounce around to different villages. You can even take your car onto these ferries, which for some reason feels kind of awesome. You can also get around on another kind of boat. Having a boat to yourself also touches on the previous ingredient of unplanned adventure. It feels like the epitome of escape. You're cruising around a lake, wherever you want. You find a village that looks cool, and you end up parking in the public dock and running around. Until we decided to jump back on the boat and do it again. This was our chosen splurge for the trip, and it was well worth it. My favorite part about how we got this boat is you just find a local guy at a dock and ask if you can rent his boat, and he tells you yes, and before you know it, you're cruising. The last ingredient is one that I have a hard time quantifying. I don't know what to call it or how to even think about it, but I'm gonna call it moving through mountains. In any way, any fashion, any mode of transportation. With your legs, with a train, with a car. Just moving through big mountains, watching peaks and mountain rivers move by you as you traverse large, daunting mountains. Mountain roads always look like they were designed to be art, but somehow they're incredibly functional. They get you up that steep grade and across the mountain pass. First, we drove through these mountains, the boys listening to an audiobook about a frog and a toad, and Iz and I having long conversations about big things and little things, connecting and dreaming about the future. Moving through these mountains does something to my brain, and I can't really describe it, but it's good. It's really good. Just over the border from Italy into Switzerland, you can get on a train that takes you over the Swiss Alps. When you're on a train like this, surrounded by large mountains and moving through them, for me, my mind is forced to be right here. I'd successfully escaped any pressure, any of that pulling stress that makes you think about the thing you have to do. It was all gone. We got off at a little town called Poschiavo, which had a river with water that was so blue it seemed unfair. We found a little town square and wandered the town before getting back on the train and making the journey back. And let me remind you that it doesn't have to be these quaint, beautiful, world-renowned Alps. Moving through any mountain range, in a train or in a car or hiking, has the same effect for me. It's that mountain effect. The mountains somehow always filter the world away from me. Now, I love cities and beaches, but when my chest is tight and my brain is buzzing with stress, I know it's time for an escape. So, this is my recipe for escape. Mountains, village, unplanned adventures, waters and boats, and moving through mountains. It's like medicine for me. It cures an overworked brain and helps me truly restore myself and reinvigorate the relationships with my family. very big thank you to Peak Design for sponsoring this video. Peak Design makes a bag that I have been using for years, ever since I started really doing travel filmmaking and traveling a lot. It's a very smart camera bag, as well as a bag that I use for a lot of other things that have nothing to do with cameras. They just launched the version 2 of their everyday bag, which is the bag I've been using for years, and they sent me one. It's still got a lot of the smart design stuff from the original, but it's got some upgrades that are pretty cool and I've been having a really fun time playing around with. Weatherproof coating. It's got some other kind of subtle design tweaks in terms of the cuts and where the zipper is and exactly where the pockets are. It's got magnets in the backs of the straps, and so the straps kind of lay like perfectly flat against the back. It's little smart features like that that really keep me coming back to Peak Design. They designed a tripod earlier this year that has become my new travel tripod. I use it for every project. And with this new bag, they increased the size of the water bottle container, so now you can slip the tripod into it and it won't like swing out. For a little extra support, I use this little key fob and wrap it around the tripod and connect it to a little universal Peak connector right there. So this is the new Peak Design Everyday Bag. This is the 30-liter, and it's just a comfortable, smart bag that's very durable. So thanks, Peak Design. As a part of this new launch, they also have a smaller version, which is this zip design, which is a little bit different. And I've been using that as I've been traversing around. I throw my drone in here. And then of course there's Sling, which is if I'm just using the drone and going out and kind of exploring with the drone and maybe like one lens or something that I can throw in here. This thing is fantastic. It's super small and easy, and it's just a sling that goes around. I have been using their stuff long before they ever sponsored my videos and can say they're great. So check out the link in my description and you can go over to Peak Design, check out these bags, and hopefully you will like them as much as I do. Thank you, Peak Design, for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching this piece on my trip to Italy and Switzerland. It was really kind of my way of articulating this feeling of escape that I kind of yearn for after long periods of work, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.